Jessica Winters wiped a streak of grease from her forehead, leaving behind a black smudge that matched the many others on her well-worn mechanic's jumpsuit. At 32, she had already spent 15 years working on cars, the last 5 as the owner of Winters Auto Repair in the small town of Millfield, Ohio. Her shop wasn't fancy, just 4 bays, a small office, and a waiting area with mismatched furniture, and a coffee machine that had seen better days. But what Jessica lacked in amenities, she made up for in skill and honesty. The bell above the door jingled as a middle-aged man in a crisp business suit walked in. Jessica recognized him immediately. Richard Maxwell, the owner of Maxwell Development, which had been buying up properties all over town. His company had already transformed the old mill into luxury apartments and was eyeing the block of small businesses where Jessica's shop stood. "Ms. Winters," Maxwell said, his voice smooth as polished chrome. "I was hoping to catch you. Do you have a minute to discuss a business opportunity?" Jessica wiped her hands on a shop rag. "I'm pretty busy, Mr. Maxwell. 3 cars waiting, and I'm down a mechanic this week." "This won't take long," he insisted, setting his briefcase on her counter and clicking it open. "My company has plans to revitalize this entire block. Modern retail, clean facades, the works. Your property is, well, let's say it doesn't quite fit the aesthetic we're going for." Jessica felt her shoulders tense. "My shop might not be pretty, but it's paid for, and it serves the community just fine." Maxwell smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I'm prepared to offer you 20% above market value. Enough to relocate to the industrial park outside of town. Better facilities, more space. I appreciate the offer, but I'm not interested in selling. My father built this place, and my customers know where to find me." Maxwell's smile tightened. "Well, think about it. My offer won't last forever." He handed her a business card. "The town council is very supportive of our beautification initiatives. It would be a shame if code inspections became more thorough for businesses holding up progress." As Maxwell left, Jessica couldn't shake the feeling that a storm was brewing. She tucked his card under the counter and went back to work, trying to ignore the knot forming in her stomach. A week later, Jessica was elbow-deep in a transmission rebuild when Tyler, her part-time high school assistant, poked his head into the bay. "Jess, there's a building inspector here. Says he needs to check some things." Jessica frowned, wiping her hands as she walked to the front. A balding man with a clipboard was already wandering around her waiting area, making notes. "Can I help you?" Jessica asked. "Frank Davies, County Building Inspector," he replied without looking up. "Routine inspection. We've received some anonymous concerns about potential code violations." "Anonymous concerns," Jessica echoed. "That's interesting timing." Davies shrugged. "I just go where I'm told." He proceeded to spend the next 2 hours meticulously checking every inch of her shop, from the electrical panel to the bathroom sink fixtures. By the time he left, Jessica's clipboard held a list of 12 violations that would need to be addressed within 30 days. The following morning, as Jessica was calculating the cost of the required updates, nearly $15,000 worth, her phone rang. It was Richard Maxwell. "Ms. Winters, I heard about your inspection yesterday. Unfortunate timing." "Is it?" Jessica's voice was cold. "Seems awfully convenient after your visit." "These things happen," Maxwell said smoothly. "My offer still stands, though I should mention that property values in your area have been fluctuating. I might need to adjust the numbers." "My answer hasn't changed, Mr. Maxwell." "Well, those repairs will be costly, and I hear there might be some zoning discussions at next month's council meeting. Something about restricting automotive repair in mixed-use areas." After hanging up, Jessica kicked a nearby trash can, sending it clattering across the floor. Tyler looked up from his textbook, eyes wide. "Everything okay, boss?" "No," Jessica admitted, "but it will be. I'm not letting some suit bully me out of my father's shop. Over the next month, Jessica scrambled to address the code violations. She drained her savings and worked 18-hour days to make the repairs herself, rather than hiring contractors. The day before the re-inspection, she was finally satisfied that everything was up to code. The morning of the inspection, Jessica arrived to find her shop's front window shattered and graffiti sprayed across the brick. Eyesore. The security camera had been disabled, its wires neatly cut. Officer Pete Donovan shook his head as he took photos. Third vandalism case on this block this month. All small businesses. All ones refusing to sell to Maxwell Development. That can't be a coincidence, Jessica said. Between you and me, it's not, Pete admitted. But proving it is another story. The re-inspection went poorly. Davies found 3 new violations that hadn't been on the original list. When Jessica protested, he simply shrugged. Regulations change. That afternoon, the local newspaper ran a full-page ad from Maxwell Development showcasing their vision for a revitalized Main Street, with Jessica's shop conspicuously replaced by a sleek cafe with outdoor seating. The final blow came when Jessica's bank called. Her business loan was being reviewed for compliance with current business plan projections. The bank officer sounded apologetic but firm. If the shop's revenue declined or additional substantial expenses were incurred, they might have to revisit the terms. That evening, as Jessica was cleaning up the broken glass, a classic Ford Mustang pulled up, a beautiful 1967 fastback in Highland green. The driver, a young man in military fatigues, stepped out looking worried. "Are you still open?" he asked, eyeing the boarded-up window. "Barely," Jessica replied. "What's wrong with your car?" "It's making a weird noise. I'm supposed to report to Fort Knox in 3 days, and I can't afford to break down halfway there." Jessica popped the hood and listened to the engine. "Sounds like your timing's off. I can fix it, but parts for these old Mustangs don't come cheap." The soldier, whose Namatar grade Miller looked crestfallen. "I just spent everything on emergency leave to see my mom before deployment. She's been sick." Jessica thought about her own dwindling bank account, then looked at the soldier's worried face. "Tell you what, let me fix it for you, no charge. Consider it a thank you for your service." 2 weeks later, Jessica arrived at her shop to find an eviction notice taped to the door. According to the document, her building had been sold to Maxwell Development, and she had 30 days to vacate the premises. "This is impossible," she muttered, hands shaking. The property belonged to her family, had for 40 years. She immediately called her lawyer, who promised to look into it. By afternoon, Jessica had her answer. Her mortgage had indeed been sold, multiple times in rapid succession between different financial entities, ultimately landing with a subsidiary of Maxwell Development. There had been a clerical error in the paperwork processing that made it appear she had defaulted. "They can't do this," Jessica insisted to her lawyer. "It's fraud. It's clever paperwork," the lawyer corrected. "We can fight it, but that'll take months in court. Meanwhile, legally, they can lock you out in 30 days unless we get an injunction." As Jessica was contemplating this devastating news, Richard Maxwell himself strolled into her shop, looking around with the satisfied air of someone surveying a new purchase. "Ms. Winters, I thought I'd stop by to discuss transition arrangements. We're prepared to be generous with your moving allowance if you'll agree to leave within 2 weeks rather than 30 days. Jessica stared at him, rage building inside her. "You bought my mortgage." "Business is business," Maxwell smiled. "You should have taken my original offer. My father built this place." Jessica's voice cracked. "This shop put me through school. It's all I have." "And now it's mine," Maxwell replied. "Progress isn't always pretty, Ms. Winters, but it is inevitable." As Maxwell turned to leave, he paused. "Oh, and I'd appreciate if you'd stop telling people I'm behind the vandalism. That kind of talk could be considered defamatory." Jessica sat alone in her office, long after closing time, surrounded by the familiar sounds and smells of the shop she'd grown up in. For the first time since her father's death, she allowed herself to cry, the weight of defeat crushing down on her. But as the tears dried, another emotion replaced the sadness: determination. Maxwell had resources and connections, but Jessica had something he didn't: 30 years of community ties and a reputation for honesty. She wouldn't go down without a fight. Jessica's first call was to Pete Donovan. "I need to know everything about Richard Maxwell and his development company," she explained. "Something doesn't add up." "Officially, I can't help," Pete replied. "Unofficially, my brother works in the county records office. I'll see what I can find out." Next, Jessica contacted every customer in her database, over 15 years worth. She explained her situation and asked if anyone had connections in real estate, banking, or local government. The response was overwhelming. By evening, she had assembled an impromptu war council of supporters. A retired judge, a paralegal, 2 bank employees, and a city planning official who had been Jessica's first boyfriend back in high school. "Maxwell's development company is mostly smoke and mirrors," explained Tricia from the bank. "They leverage one project to finance the next, and they're deeply in debt. The mill conversion is already behind schedule and over budget." "That tracks with what we're seeing in permitting," said Mike from City Planning. "They've requested 3 extensions on the mill project and haven't submitted updated financial guarantees." The retired judge, Harold Bennington, had been reviewing Jessica's mortgage documents. "This isn't just clever paperwork," he said grimly. "This is fraud." They backdated transfer documents and forged signatures on the notice of default. Jessica felt a spark of hope. "So we can fight this." "We can do better than that," Harold replied. "We can build a RICO case." This pattern of harassment, followed by lowball offers, followed by manufactured financial distress. You're not the first victim, but you could be the last. The breakthrough came when Pete's brother discovered a series of shell companies, all leading back to Maxwell Development. The same pattern had played out in 3 other towns. Small businesses harassed and forced out, replaced by developments that promised jobs and tax revenue, but ultimately delivered neither. Jessica started gathering testimonials from former business owners who had been forced out in other towns. She compiled a dossier of evidence: the suspicious timing of inspections, the pattern of vandalism, the fraudulent mortgage transfers. Meanwhile, her customers staged a show of support, coming in for oil changes and minor repairs they didn't really need, paying in cash to help keep her afloat. 3 weeks into Jessica's fight, the local newspaper ran an expose titled "The Maxwell Method: Development or Destruction." The reporter had worked with Jessica's group to uncover Maxwell's pattern of predatory acquisition and broken promises in other communities. The day after the article appeared, Maxwell stormed into Jessica's shop, face red with fury. "You'll regret this," he snarled. "I'll bury you in legal bills until your grandchildren are paying them off." "You need money for that," Jessica replied calmly. "And from what I hear, your investors are getting nervous." Maxwell's face went pale. "What have you done?" "Me? Nothing. But it seems the State Banking Commission is suddenly very interested in those creative financing arrangements of yours. And the IRS has some questions about those shell companies." The next blow came when Jessica's lawyer filed a formal complaint with the district attorney's office, complete with evidence of mortgage fraud. 3 days later, the DA announced a preliminary investigation into Maxwell Development. Maxwell's partners began to distance themselves. The town council, sensing the shifting winds, tabled discussions about the zoning changes Maxwell had been lobbying for. His banker called in loans for the mill project, forcing construction to halt. Jessica used the breathing room to organize a community meeting, inviting small business owners from all over town. "Maxwell picked us off one by one," she told the crowd. "But together, we're stronger than he is." They formed the Millfield Small Business Alliance that night, with Jessica as their first president. Their mission: mutual support and collective bargaining with developers who wanted to change the town's character. The morning of Jessica's eviction hearing dawned bright and clear. She arrived at the courthouse to find the sidewalk lined with supporters, customers, fellow business owners, and even Frank Davies, the building inspector, who had come forward with evidence that Maxwell had pressured him to find violations at Jessica's shop. Inside the courtroom, Jessica's lawyer presented their evidence of fraud. Maxwell's attorney argued technicalities, but Judge Martinez seemed unimpressed. "Before I rule," the judge said, "I understand there's a witness who has asked to speak." A man in full military dress uniform entered the courtroom. Jessica recognized him immediately. It was Miller, the soldier with the Mustang, except now his uniform bore the insignia of a lieutenant colonel. "Your Honor, I'm Lieutenant Colonel James Miller, Judge Advocate General's calls. I was in town visiting family when I became aware of this case. The Department of Defense has an interest in these proceedings." Maxwell's attorney objected, but the judge allowed Colonel Miller to continue. "Mr. Maxwell's company has been awarded 3 construction contracts on military bases in the past 2 years. Those contracts require compliance with all federal and state laws. Evidence of fraud or racketeering would constitute grounds for immediate termination of those contracts and debarment from future government work." Miller turned to face Maxwell directly. "2 months ago, I was on emergency leave to visit my dying mother. My car broke down, and Ms. Winters fixed it for free so I could return to duty on time. When I learned she was being targeted by the same developer, who holds contracts with the Army, I felt obligated to investigate." He placed a folder on the judge's bench. "These are the preliminary findings of the Army's investigation into Maxwell Development's contract compliance. We found significant discrepancies, including the use of substandard materials and fraudulent billing practices." The courtroom erupted in whispers. Maxwell sat frozen, his face ashen. In light of this evidence, Judge Martinez announced, "I'm not only dismissing the eviction proceedings, but I'm issuing an emergency injunction preventing Maxwell Development from taking any action against Ms. Winters' property pending the outcome of criminal investigations." 6 months later, Jessica stood outside her shop, watching as workers installed a new sign: "Winters Auto Repair and Classic Car Restoration." Business was booming, especially the restoration side, which had grown after her work on Miller's Mustang gained attention. Richard Maxwell had pled guilty to multiple charges of wire fraud and racketeering. His company had collapsed, with investors and creditors fighting over the remains. The mill project had been taken over by a community development corporation, which was converting it into affordable housing and spaces for local businesses. The Millfield Small Business Alliance, now 50 members strong, had worked with the town council to develop new rules for commercial development, requiring community input and local hiring commitments. Jessica's phone buzzed with a text from Colonel Miller. "Promotion ceremony next month. Any chance you can make it? The Mustang, and I will pick you up." She smiled as she texted back her acceptance. Their friendship had grown over the months, with Miller consulting her on the Army's vehicle maintenance contracts after the Maxwell scandal exposed weaknesses in the procurement system. The bell above the door jingled, and a young woman walked in, toolbox in hand. "You must be Amanda," Jessica said, extending her hand. "Our new apprentice." "Yes, ma'am," Amanda replied nervously. "Thank you for the opportunity." "Don't thank me yet," Jessica laughed. "Thank the community fund." After Maxwell's downfall, the town had established a small business support program, including funding for apprenticeships in trades like auto repair. As Jessica showed Amanda around the shop, Tyler came in waving a letter. "Jess, I got accepted to the mechanical engineering program." "That's fantastic." Jessica hugged him. Part of her settlement from Maxwell's estate had gone to establish a scholarship for local students pursuing technical education. Later that evening, as Jessica locked up the shop, she paused to look at the building her father had bought 40 years ago. The structure was the same, but so much had changed. What Maxwell had tried to destroy had instead been strengthened. The shop wasn't just hers anymore. It belonged to the community, a symbol of what could happen when people stood together against bullies and corruption. As she walked to her truck, she noticed a familiar green Mustang parked across the street. Miller leaned against it waiting. "Thought you might want to take it for a spin," he called. "She's running perfectly thanks to you." Jessica smiled, feeling the weight of the past year finally lifting completely from her shoulders. "I'd like that," she replied, walking toward the car and the future it represented. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and become a part of our Furry Animals Tales. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. We love hearing from our amazing viewers around the world.